Time to please Allah, a chance to gain reward. I will spend on you, he says, on all who spend in good cause. Good deeds are opportunities, sparkling bright and true, raising you in the sight of Allah and adorning Al-Jannah for you. So rush to earn his reward. Don't forget the oppressed. And when you go to sleep at night.
Bismillah, alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen, wassalatu wassalam ala rasulil kareem, wa ala alihi wa sahbihi, wa man tabi'a sunnatuhu ila yawmiddin. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome again to another episode of your weekly Islamic chat show here on Huda TV, coming to you live from Dubai Media City in the UAE. And I'm your host, Ismail Bullock, and of course your host,
Gabriel Al-Romaani.
We're back here again, inshallah. And I wasn't here last week, preparing for a very nice event, mashallah, that went on called the New Muslim Summit. It was a very, very, mashallah, nice event. And obviously that bears some kind of relevance to our previous episodes.
Right.
So I think a lot of those lectures will be uploaded to YouTube sometime in the near future.
And also Huda was there and covered some of the...
Huda was there, of course, yeah. We had...
so I think we'll get some footage.
Yeah, there'll be some, I think, some reports going into some of their... I think they have a new show now that they do on a daily basis in the evening.
Okay.
Where they'll add different reports from different places around the world.
So, I think you did an interview as well with them.
Yeah, I did an interview with me and some of the other speakers like Abu Mus'ab and Yusha Evans and Mohammed Tim Humble and stuff.
And there was it was nice to see the new Muslims there. It was like a lot of new Muslims.
No, it was very nice, mashallah. And there was like 16 shahadas there.
Mashallah.
And it was very actually... I actually just saw some of the photos they uploaded because it was arranged by kelima.org, the Islamic Center here. And they uploaded some of the photos, and it kind of, even though it was only last week, it felt like it was already so, it kind of was kind of emotional because it was a very nice, those events you get that really big iman, all the brothers and obviously the sisters with all the sisters and the speakers, the people that I was spending time with the other speakers. Yeah. So it was a really like iman lifting kind of experience. So as it finished, it was kind of like kind of deflated.
It was very nice to see the Chinese, the Asian new Muslims, mashallah, and the Filipinos. That was really, really cool.
And what was really good, I think you were there, the Jummah, the khutbah Jummah.
I wasn't, but I heard about it.
Yeah, the Jummah khutbah was done by this Chinese guy, fantastic Arabic, did it by memory, put all of us to shame. And mashallah, and when he led the salah, perfect tajweed, mashallah. Amazing.
Which kind of leads us into our topic today, and it's about knowledge and seeking knowledge and the importance of seeking knowledge. So I heard about that Chinese brother, and I was very impressed. I mean, subhanAllah, because the Arabic language and the Chinese language are so different, right? And yet, for someone to excel in knowledge and to be able to reach that level in Arabic, it's really it's tawfiq from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and obviously kind of like a sign of his sincerity, wallah alam. And we wish all of us could reach that level, subhanAllah, and because seeking knowledge is so important, and as the hadith, which is, its authenticity is disputed, but the meaning is authentic. طلب العلم فريضة على كل مسلم, subhanallah, which is every Muslim has to have knowledge. Every Muslim has to know. I think this is one thing that really attracted me towards Islam, because before you're kind of told leave it to the priest, and in Christianity anyway. Don't question, leave it to the priest, leave it to, and even then, obviously, we respect the people's knowledge and everything, but there's a responsibility on every person, every Muslim to seek some kind of knowledge.
Yes, subhanAllah. I mean, you just reminded me, that's what I said in my lecture at the New Muslim Summit, is that I was saying to the people, part of it, because it was addressed to new Muslims, non-Muslims, and Muslims, and how to deal with new Muslims. So there was some non-Muslims in the crowd, so I wanted to show that to them, and I said exactly what you said. I said that we're not, we don't have a secret knowledge. It's locked up in some city in the world which only the top VIPs can get hold of. I said there's nothing inside the Kaaba hidden, the cubicle building in Mecca. I said, it's an open book. The Quran is there, explanation of the Quran is there, the life of the Prophet Muhammad. We don't have a life of the Prophet Muhammad we give to
The VIPs
the
or
non-Muslims,
something, or this,
and we
right.
have a secret one full of sordid secrets. You know, it's
Right.
it's the same for everybody, and it's easily available. And I said, you know, Islam tells us to seek knowledge. When the Prophet ﷺ received his revelation from the angel Jibreel, the first thing he was Iqra,
Yes,
read,
very important.
which is obviously reading is what? Learning,
Learning.
developing,
Yes,
nurturing, cultivating yourself, getting an education. So I said Islam is the complete opposite. It tells you to seek. It tells you to, you know, learn, and things should kind of make sense, and you should learn. You know, learn.
in contrast to that, early Christians used to say, don't read the Bible. As we know through history, the people who began the translation of the Bible were actually, some people were killed, were actually put to they're burnt even, subhanAllah. You were not allowed to even possess a copy of the Bible in certain areas. And that's when I said that, you know, only take it from the priests. They're only allowed to basically, the priests were the only ones allowed to say what the Bible says and whatnot, and to interpret. And it was anyone who would even attempt to try to grasp the meanings or understand would be, you know, right away heretic, and you know, pretty much put on trial even. SubhanAllah. So as you said, the seeking of knowledge was with the Muslims from the beginning. It was part and parcel of the Islamic, you know, discourse from the beginning. Every person, and as we know, at the time of Prophet ﷺ, the Ahl Sufa, who devoted themselves to seeking knowledge, and there were people who were a bit poor, or whatever, but subhanAllah, there are people who were, you know, the knowledge was being developed, and that's why some scholars say that there was as many as 3 or 4 institutes of learning established by the Prophet ﷺ himself in Medina. I was doing a little research paper for one of my courses last semester. It was called The Subtle Links Between the Scholars. And going through the papers, I discovered this information. I was like quite amazed that, you know, there's some proofs that the Prophet himself established about 3 or 4 like actual institutes for people to actually start studying. And what a contrast, when you look at it, because, you know, when you learn more in Islam, that's what I found, is that you become more sure that this is the truth. Right, and in the words of Gerald Dirks, who was you know, you could call him a Christian scholar, but who reverted to Islam.
He's the one who graduated from the Divinity School in Harvard, right?
Yes.
He has the Cross and the Crescent book.
Cross and the Crescent book, yeah, and many other. He's quite prolific, actually. Subhanallah.
He has that famous statement: "If you want to be a true Christian, you have to be a Muslim."
A Muslim. But it's something that he says that the more he studied Christianity, the more he you know, his knowledge become deeper. He realized that this is not the truth. He said, once I reached the master's PhD level, I realized that this is not the truth. While on the opposite, when you reach like a master's or PhD or the equivalent to it in seeking knowledge in Islam, subhanAllah, the stronger you get, and the more convinced you are that you know, you're on the true path. SubhanAllah.
Now you mentioned those institutes in your research. Was one of them happen to be like a women's institute? Because what sprung to my mind when you said that is the hadith where the women came to the Prophet ﷺ and they said to him, you know, you're always with the men. Give us a separate day. And then he told them to come to such and such place at such and such time. And then they started to. So
that's true.
What struck my mind is maybe what that halaqa or that circle or that institute was maybe one of
them
could have been one of them.
I believe it was on a Thursday or something that he would actually dedicate that day specifically for women. And subhanAllah.
And that's another contrast, because I mean, sorry to cut you off there, but I mean, like you said, we're talking about other civilizations. Even to like 100 or couple of hundred years back in the West, the woman couldn't learn, she couldn't speak, she couldn't teach, you know, vote, have any kind of job, have any kind of place in the hierarchy of society. Whereas in Islam, you know, we see back then the Prophet Muhammad, peace upon him, was giving them separate lessons. The most prolific narrator of hadith is the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him's wife. So you could say the biggest scholar was a woman.
Yes.
From that aspect. So it's a very complete opposite there. Like, don't ask questions, don't learn. Ask questions, learn.
Yes.
Women shouldn't be learning. Women should be learning, and so in many cases, women are the teachers. We know many different scholars of hadith that were women who would teach the men under certain, obviously, conditions.
Right.
Subhanallah.
And even more shocking, pre-Renaissance, women were debated whether they have souls or not, and you know,
The older
just, yeah.
women are demons.
I mean, it's just, we're not trying to bash anyone here, but it's just interesting because today when people speak of Islam, they look at Islam as okay, these people are like sheep, and they're just following. I recently met a British person last Friday, and I was talking to him after the show. Actually, I was buying something from it, some furniture, and he was a soldier, an ex-soldier from the British Army. So somehow we started talking about Islam and about life in general. And he said, the problem is with these imams and these priests, and he basically put everyone under the same umbrella, saying that they're kind of like playing around and they're misleading people, and the people are just sheep, basically. And I said, I'm sorry, but a lot of people project their experiences that they have in their own faith onto Islam. And I said, I tend to defer that Islam is much different. That Islam actually, basically, pushes you to seek knowledge and pushes you to understand and pushes you to have a grasp of the whole picture. And I said, actually, what you're saying, Islam in the Quran, there's a lot of answers for these people that you have bad experiences with, these so-called the hierarchy of the scholars, or whatever you want to call them, the clergy, right? I said, Islam, if you read the Quran, so I was kind of pushing towards that. I said, read the Quran. No, I think the position that I'm in right now, I'm fine. I said, man, you just need to read. You can't project what your experience with Christianity onto Islam.
And that's what a lot of people do, isn't it? I mean, we come across many people who have taken the road of atheism is because of these kind of concepts that no one can explain, and they're told not to even try to understand about them, fundamental beliefs.
Right.
Like we always said, I mean, like we always say, I think I even said it on that day in the lecture, Islam says, that the fundamental belief has to be logical, has to be rational, has to be something you can kind of easily understand for it to be a belief that everyone can believe in and is our salvation.
Right.
A belief that's our salvation cannot be some very confusing belief, because this is a fundamental belief. So when it's given to somebody, it must be it must make sense, not be, not something that doesn't make sense, something you can't understand at all, and you're just told, don't ask, it doesn't make sense, but just believe it anyway.
Right, just believe it.
And that's what we always stress. And a lot of people have taken that road, especially in Europe, because of the nonsensical beliefs, because they are showing God, I mean, not that I like to say this, but they're showing God as an old man with a bald head and a big grey beard.
Right.
They're humanizing, giving God humanistic, animalistic features, and all these kind of things. Just sounds like some kind of old wives' tale or some Greek Roman mythology, made up stories. God is a made up story, like Zeus and Apollo and Aphrodite and all these things, just some old fairy tales, because of these kind of beliefs that are, as we know, have been mixed with the whole mythology and paganism or what have you.
Which is, again, brought something to my mind, because these atheists today, they basically criticize Islam from this angle. They say, knowledge is not existent in Islam. You're just following. Reason and rationale, logic, any kind of, intellectual discourse or intellectual endeavors are not present in Islam. And I saw a video recently of a famous atheist. And subhanAllah, it kind of gives them a kibr, when you see the way they criticize Islam and they think that it's just a joke. And subhanAllah, I've seen, I was watching a video. There was a famous atheist who went to visit a girls' Islamic school, okay, and had a discussion with the girls. He was quite polite to them, he didn't debate them on the spot. However, while he was the guest of the show, he played that clip and he said, look, these girls actually think that there are scientific miracles in the Quran, or there are certain, knowledge that was not available before, and it was, available to the Prophet, and only recently we've discovered that. So they said they actually believe that, and he gave the example of, Maraj al-Bahraini, that we know the ayah of the two different seas. بينهما برزخ لا يبغيان, that there's a barrier between them, they don't pass. In Surah Rahman, and there's other ayats about this, about the sweet and the salty water. And he said, SubhanAllah, look at this. A rational person, a person who criticizes Islam from supposedly a rational point of view, a scientific point of view. He said, take, a cup of water, 2 cups of water, with a salt one and a fresh one or a sweet one, and mix them and see what happens. Because these girls obviously think that the Quran says salt water and sweet water doesn't mix, right? So he said, please, someone, get that teacher 2 cups of water, one with salt, one with fresh water, and mix them and see what happens. And everyone started clapping on the show, like he said something. And then I was like, dude, it talks about seas. The volume of water is what matters.
And it's a scientific fact anyway. It's not like something we made up. Anyone can Google it,
But that's, like haloclines and the difference in salinity, right? It has a difference in density, and the two will never mix, right? This is a known physical, chemical fact, right? But the arrogance, even of an educated person, sometimes can stop him or her from seeing the truth and admitting, having at least the humbleness to admit that, hey, this is something amazing, right? This knowledge that is found in the Quran is something amazing. So maybe going back to what we're talking about here, that one of the prerequisites, and we'll be discussing inshallah with our guests that will be coming on, of seeking knowledge is to be humble, right? To actually have that humbleness and to realize that, well, you don't know too much, you're quite ignorant. And subhanAllah, even as the Prophet ﷺ, who's the messenger of Allah, before the wahi, the revelation, he didn't have knowledge of things, as Allah SWT says in many ayats of the Quran, when he gives them certain stories of the prophets, and he didn't have knowledge of these before. People don't even the people of the book did not have the correct knowledge of these things, and here comes the Quran to correct that knowledge, right? So it was the arrogance that sometimes stopped the people from seeing the truth.
You mentioned the knowledge and ignorance. I actually read a quote today, Qadarullah, by chance. I wasn't looking for it on Facebook, and it was of I believe it was Imam Ahmed ibn Hanbal, and he was asked about knowledge. What should the intention of knowledge? Obviously, there have to be sincerity for Allah, but he said the intent. Apart from that, the intention should be that you want to remove the ignorance from yourself and then from others. So again, Islam is not saying remain ignorant. Islam is saying remove the ignorance. That continuous, learn, seek knowledge, educate yourself, ask questions. Well, obviously, the right questions, and seek the knowledge of Allah.
And that's the beautiful thing, when that learning and seeking knowledge is a two-way process. Is learning and teaching. Right, and actually it becomes almost an obligation upon a person when he has knowledge to convey the knowledge, when he has certain ability to understand, grasp certain things, that they should convey that knowledge to other people. They should teach people, that they should convey the message. And they are. I was listening actually to Shaykh Muhammad Salah. He was talking about this, that subhanAllah, as soon as you have grasped something, you should convey it. As the Prophet said, بَلِّغْ عَنِّي وَلَوْ آيَةً. And convey from even if it's one ayah. He said, but the thing, I'm sure we're going to discuss this, is that the person who conveys has to know his limits, right? And that's another, subject. But the person who conveys, the person who teaches, obviously has to know his limits and stick only to what he knows or she knows for sure, and this is established, correct, is authentic, and they can convey that, not go beyond that. So it's a two-way thing. And also coming from education background, when you teach someone, you will learn it better, subhanAllah. And when you convey it to someone, it might be that the student might sometimes understand it better than the teacher, right? Or the person who conveys, as per the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, when he said that, to convey this message, perhaps that the receiver will understand it better than the person who is given it, subhanAllah. Anyway, we're heading for a break, inshallah, and we have our guests coming on. Don't forget to give us a call if you have, even we'd like to hear from people. What are their stories about seeking knowledge? And we have, alhamdulillah, we're gonna have our guest here is this person who's seeking knowledge. So if you have some stories or anything like that, you can see our number on the screen. You can give us a shout. It's live, or you can send us a message on Facebook and we'll take it up. So inshallah, we'll see you after the break here on Huda TV. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Time to please Allah, a chance to gain reward. I will spend on you, he says.
فلا وربك لا يؤمنون حتى يحكموك فيما شجر بينهم ثم لا يجدوا في أنفسهم حرجا مما قضيت ويسلموا تسليما. There are 3 levels. Sister Rayhan from Bahrain.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Fahim from Sweden. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. How are you?
Alhamdulillah. Barakallah feek, Fahim. May Allah bless you and your family.
Sheikh, I have one question.
Now, that is not allowed. Why isn't allowed? Because the Prophet ﷺ said, "Man ghasha falaysa minna." He who deceives or betrays does not belong to us. He's not one of us. A person who is given the sadaqah or leading the prayer does not have necessarily to be praying fard. Maybe he's praying the nafl that is after the prayer, the 2 sunnah after dhuhr or after maghrib or after isha. And the follower, the imam, will be praying with the intention of offering the fard that he has missed. Okay, barakallahu feek.
Welcome to Tech Talk. I'm your host, Omar Shear. This season of Tech Talk, we will focus specifically on the internet.
A student would type their paper, and instead of handing me a hard copy of their paper, they would upload it to this learning system, this e-learning system.
I have some great experience when it comes to technology, and in particular, internet technology. Call to action is something that we do in our day-to-day lives, and maybe we don't realize it. Now we want to discuss, after you have a product and you have a website and you have a way to communicate with your customers, which would be your email marketing system, now it's time to take the money from the customer.
Time to please Allah, a chance to gain reward. I will spend on you, he says.
Bismillah, salatu wassalam rasulillah. Welcome back, and we are talking about seeking knowledge, the importance of seeking knowledge. And just before we took a break, we were discussing, we started with looking back at the importance and how Islam started with the word Iqra, the revelation of the Prophet ﷺ, how this emphasized the responsibility on the ummah of seeking knowledge, and how it is a responsibility on every single Muslim to have knowledge, especially of the basics, and how the basics are the most important. And in contrast to that, how in certain other religions, people will tell you, well, stay away from that, shouldn't question anything, you shouldn't learn anything, you shouldn't ask questions, and so on. And we saw throughout history how that developed. And also, we talked a little bit about the atheists, subhanAllah, and how they attack Islam and accuse it of, lacking intellectualism. And
actually, that reminds me, I can pitch your or the organisation that obviously you're the co-founder of, but we're both involved to some extent, of Iqra.org, ICRAA.org, which kind of tackles a lot of those kind of atheist attacks and Orientalist attacks. There's a lot of really good, mashallah, articles on there that people can check out.
Yeah, a lot of good research, alhamdulillah, that we are dealing with, and going in depth into the scholars and their opinions and so on, and specifically it deals with these kind of attacks and removing doubts from people's minds when it comes to intellectual doubts, subhanAllah, because that's what it seems to be the hot thing today, right? That everyone claims rationale and reason. However, they don't exercise it usually, right? Which is something. Anyway, I would like to introduce and welcome Actually, I'll let them introduce themselves. Welcome our guest today.
Jazakumullah.
This is brother Bilal, mashallah, and brother Naveed.
Naveed Aziz, yes.
Please, brothers, introduce yourself in a few minutes.
My name is Sayyid Bilal Shafi, and I'm in my third year at the Islamic University of Medina in the College of Sharia, and my nationality is Canadian, and my background is Pakistan.
Tim Hortons.
Tim Hortons, yes.
Okay, mashallah.
That's my job. I'm the only British guy. Here, I do the Tim Hortons job.
Yes. Okay, mashallah. Okay, mashallah. And you're studying Sharia, mashallah.
Yes.
Alhamdulillah.
So you say the third year. So how much more do you have to go?
I have basically 2 more years to go. So I spent 1 year in the Arabic language program studying Arabic because that's the requirement.
Okay, mashallah.
Mashallah, so 2 more years.
MashaAllah.
And brother Naveed?
For those who don't know.
I don't know where to start, but I graduated from the Islamic University of Medina in 2008. So I did the Arabic program there, I did the Sharia program there as well. And I'm currently residing in Calgary, Canada. Actually, it's not that bad.
That's
compared to the rest of Canada, this year has actually been very, very mild.
That's weird.
We had one stretch of negative digits, but for the most part, alhamdulillah, it's been pretty positive. Like even this whole week, it's been close to +10 and stuff like that.
Wow.
So alhamdulillah, it's been pretty good.
So my brother's he's in Edmonton.
Yeah, Edmonton and Fort McMurray, the more north you go, you might get a bit chillier.
Right.
But yeah, it's been relatively good this year, alhamdulillah.
Mashallah, mashallah.
Yeah.
Okay, we're discussing the importance of seeking knowledge. So we'd just like to hear your idea and your views on, what does it mean to, and we discussed the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, which its authenticity, and sometimes some people dispute it. طلب العلم فريضة على كل مسلم. To what extent is it important for just a normal person in Islam to seek knowledge?
Hang on. Who's the oldest?
Who's older?
I think I'd be older by default because my graduate
We'll give you the uncle status.
But that's what I'm trying to stay away from. I think without a shadow of a doubt, knowledge is of the utmost importance. I mean, not just pertaining to Islam, but pertaining to anything in life. Because without knowledge, you're not going to achieve anything. You have to have knowledge of what you're trying to do, what you're trying to achieve, in order to achieve it. So that's just from a logical standpoint. From an Islamic standpoint, obviously there's a very heavy emphasis on knowledge. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He talks about who are the people whose status is raised, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions the people of knowledge by saying, يَرْفَعِ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنْكُمْ وَالَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْعِلْمَ دَرَجَاتٍ. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala raised in status the people of knowledge and the people of Iman. You look inside Surah Al-Imran, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He talks about the beautiful testification of La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. And He gives this testification on behalf of the angels and the scholars. So it shows their great status once again. And Allah asks the rhetorical question, are the ones that know and the ones that don't know equal? Obviously they wouldn't be equal. So there's a very heavy emphasis in Islam that the more knowledge you have, I guess, the more prestige, the more rank, the more revered you are in the community.
That reminds me, even the statement of La ilaha illallah, Allah starts by saying fa'alam,
right.
know.
Right.
So even the basic testimony, we're supposed to, Allah's stressing for us to know that He is indeed Allah the One, not just simply give it lip service.
Right. Yes, subhanAllah. And one of the beautiful things about that verse, if I can just comment on it briefly, is that if you look at the context of ilm over here, ilm is like the highest level of certainty that a person can have. So this means that you can't be ignorant, nor can you be doubtful of it. So you have to have the highest level of certainty pertaining to this. And that's why one of the conditions of La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah is to have knowledge and to have certainty. Yeah.
And also plus with that comes this idea of what are the benefits of seeking knowledge, and for the people who do seek knowledge. So for example, the Prophet ﷺ, he says, مَنْ سَلَكَ طَرِيقًا يَلْتَمِسُ بِهِ عِلْمًا سَهَّلَ اللَّهُ له به طريقا إلى الجنة. That a person who treads the path of seeking knowledge, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make it easy for him to enter Jannah, a path that will help him enter Jannah. In another hadith, it comes, مَنْ يُرِدِ اللَّهُ بِهِ خَيْرًا يُفَقِّهُ فِي الدِّينِ. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if He loves someone, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it easy for him to understand the deen. And the scholars, they say that a person who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not love, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not make the path of seeking knowledge easy for him.
And just this beautiful hadith, مَنْ سَلَكَ طَرِيقًا. the hadith continues, yani, that even the fish in the
Yes,
sea and the
yes.
ant in the hole, yani, I've heard it was quite amazing that I heard the commentary said, why would the animals, these animals, make dua or istighfar for this person? And the Shaykh was saying that, subhanAllah, the person who achieves that knowledge, he will not harm the animals. He will protect them. He will give their rights. So he linked it to the animal rights, right? So that these animals actually benefit from a person of knowledge, right? It's a people of knowledge who will protect animals. And I think we discussed something about one of it was Umar
ibn Abdul Aziz.
Right.
Yeah, we had an episode we were talking about how Islam gives many different rights that people assume were established, in certain
21st
places
century,
in
20th century.
certain continents a couple of hundred years ago. And I was saying how Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, subhanAllah, he started like if you like to call it that.
Shelter.
But it's pretty much like unfortunately now we have old people's home. But this was the old animals' home where he took, he took the money from the, Bayt al-Mal, and he built an old animals' home. And he said, just like these animals have served us, we will serve them. And he used government money to pay and hire government staff to literally care for these animals, and until they die. Subhanallah.
MashaAllah.
And subhanAllah, I was listening to a sheikh, and he said that, well, you talked about animals, right? But he went further, and he said, for example, the pencil that you hold, the bag, the book, everything makes dua for you.
SubhanAllah.
So without a doubt, this is something very important. Now, going back to just the lame people, right? The normal Muslim who's not a student of knowledge. Maybe we'll discuss, discuss after about the student of knowledge. But just your average Muslim, your, Ahmed, Muhammad, and Fatima. How important is it for them and to what extent should they seek knowledge? I mean, not everyone's going to become a scholar. Not everyone is a scholar.
Yes.
Not every. I mean, there's a difference between a scholar, a sheikh, talib al-ilm, talabat al-ilm, and all these people have different, and just a normal person. So, to what extent is a normal, even, Bob, who became Muslim, right? Who's a new Muslim, right? What extent do they seek knowledge?
Before you answer that, just to add to that, because that's a very important question, because we find people today, whether they be new Muslims or old Muslims, spending their times getting into all kinds of debates and issues and stuff when they don't even know how to make wudu. Right. So you'll have this guy, have you heard the latest refutation of such a, people he's never even heard of, maybe even seen or even listened to any other lectures because he can't speak Arabic. Yeah. But he's spending his time learning this, and then you say to him, what are the arkan and the wajibat of salah? That basically, if you miss one of them, his salah could be either, could be completely useless. He has no idea, but he knows the latest, refutation. So that's also, it's very important that we let people know now what are, the right steps that someone should take.
Right. So I'll answer his question. You can answer his question. But to answer your question, I think it's quite easy. There's two types of knowledge: knowledge which is mandatory and knowledge which is recommended to have. Knowledge which is knowledge which is mandatory for every Muslim is twofold. Part one, which is mandatory because he is Muslim. So this would be issues pertaining to salah, issues pertaining to fundamentals of aqidah, issues pertaining to zakah, issues pertaining to fasting, and even when he goes for hajj, these sort of things are mandatory upon every Muslim. As soon as you hit the age of puberty, you need to be well versed in all of these matters because they become obligatory upon you. Then the second type of knowledge, which is an obligation, is that knowledge which is pertaining to your circumstance. So for example, someone who's a doctor, he needs to know what is allowed for him and what is not allowed for him. Someone who's about to get married, they need to know, what are the rights of the spouses. So those sort of things will change from one circumstance to another. So that would be the knowledge which is obligatory. And then everything else would be knowledge which is recommended. And that will fluctuate depending on his circumstance. So if he ever gets into a circumstance where he didn't have that knowledge, then that knowledge which is recommended would now become an obligation upon him.
Now, if he doesn't, him or her, they don't undertake this, the seeking of that knowledge, that becomes obligatory, and it's circumstantial, would they be sinning?
This is a very difficult question to answer, in the sense that if it's preventing them from their acts of worship and they remain upon ignorance intentionally, then yes, they would definitely be sinful. In fact, if you look into books that talk about the nullifiers of faith, usually the 10th one that they mention is the person that intentionally does not seek knowledge about that which is mandatory upon him. Because this shows like a lack of consideration, a lack of care about the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? I mean, you guys already spoke about the verse Iqra being the very first commandment. You know, add to this that the only command that was given to the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to ask for an increment of anything, right, was Rabbi zidni ilma, or qul Rabbi zidni ilma. He wasn't asked for an increase in taqwa, not in iman, not in khushu', but it was ilm, because ilm is the fundamental, you know, of everything else over here. So yeah, you know, I would say sin is one matter, but it could possibly lead to disbelief as well, and that's something to be very, very careful of.
Brother Bilal.
Going back to your question, the simple answer is don't get into refutations. You're absolutely right. There are brothers who accept Islam or who start practicing Islam, and then they listen to this person and that person, and they basically say that, you know, don't sit with that person, don't sit with this person because he's been refuted. But at the end, a person who's new to Islamic knowledge or new to the deen should stay away from these things and stick to the scholars. Whatever the scholars are saying, just stick to it, and don't listen to, like for example, other students who might say otherwise, like don't sit with that person. So yeah, I would say that you should stay away from these things until you yourself reach a level where you can understand in the first place what the refutation actually means. In a lot of cases, many of the new students who are new to Islam or new to practicing the deen, they don't even understand the refutation. They don't understand the complexity of the issue. And the scholars, they've differed throughout the centuries. They've differed.
Right. I want to just connect to this, what you're saying. When I became Muslim 10 years ago, to be honest, for the first 3-4 years, you know, a lot of the new Muslims are facing the same issue. Because once you've said, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, your family comes at you, your friends come at you, everyone wants to say something that you made a mistake. So they'll bring you a book. Hey, look at this book. What is this ex-Muslim says, or this priest, or right? And you're overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And you start reading through these things, and you want to answer them. So I find alhamdulillah, that Allah protected me, and alhamdulillah, I always say that I don't even know, alhamdulillah, Allah protected me and kept me as a Muslim. Because I've known of many people in the same circumstance, just like, oh, maybe I did the wrong, I made a mistake. So, but I became, within the first 3 years, I was, I've been Christian for my whole life, and I studied Christianity, right, at that time. But I believe that those 3 years really gave me, I became like almost a scholar of Christianity, because I was just so into it. And I was neglecting basics of Islam. And still those doubts, those shubahat were not going away. Right? Because the people were still, shaitan was, throwing. And once that seed is in there, and, I was very, very into it. I like till today, I was actually sorting through my books. I have a Bible with footnotes and everything. I'm like, man, if I would have spent that time to do that with the Quran or a book of him, I would have been. But then only later when I was able, I was like, man, what am I doing? And then I said, I need to stop. I need to go to Islam. And when I got my basics and I started studying Islam properly, that's when those shubahat disappeared.
Right.
Subhanallah. Anyway, excellent discussion, excellent topic. I want to remind our viewers they can call in live, the numbers on the screen, and we'll take a break. So we hope to hear from you here on Huda TV. Time to please Allah.
Time to please Allah, a chance to gain reward. I will spend on you, He says.
Reading the Quran is a blessing. Understanding its translation is beautiful. But diving in depth and extracting pearls from it is simply amazing. Do they not ponder upon the Quran? Every week, inshallah, we will dig deep and reflect on the verses of the Quran one by one.
Quran in Depth with Sheikh Ibrahim Zaidan, only on Huda TV.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. You're not giving it to him because he has black eyes or blue eyes. You're giving it to him because of his position. And that is why you're giving it to this particular department's head rather than giving it to the HR GM, for example. Nobody gives the HR GM anything because they don't want anything from him until they want a job. Therefore, this is the way you can judge whether it's a bribe or not. To get into a halal transaction, first of all, the bank or the financial institution should acquire and own this apartment before any commitment.
Time to please Allah, a chance to gain reward. I will spend on you, he says, all who's spending.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, and welcome back. Actually, just we're going through the break. I remember a couple of days ago was going through a lesson, a book called Hashiyat Usul al-Thalatha, you know, like explanation of the three principles. And one of the points, subhanAllah, really struck out. And this was before we'd even decided to do knowledge. And the Shaykh Abdurrahman bin Qasim, he was saying that he was emphasizing on the importance of knowledge, and he was saying that to learn the things that are fard kifaya, the things that are not a must for everyone to learn. So, like you mentioned, the things like pertinent to your ibadah, but say it's not wajib for all of us if enough people are doing it, to go and learn the sciences of hadith, for example. But he said, if someone does do that kind of knowledge, it's not even obligatory, it's better than them doing qiyam al-layl, fasting, and giving sadaqah, gold and silver.
No, without a shadow of a doubt.
And I put that on my Facebook, and so many people were amazed. They're like, wow, they were very shocked, because, imagine that. It's not even obligatory, but people, they look at fasting, it's very hard. Wake up in the middle of the night, standing for an hour in prayer. You giving your gold in charity. If someone was to look at it, they'd say, no way. No way the ulum al-hadith that I don't even have to learn. But it is, So that was a really, subhanAllah, I just said to myself, I've got to go home and put that on Facebook because it's such a beautiful point.
Actually, basically coming on this point, what many people don't understand is that seeking knowledge in itself is ibadah. And Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he says, لَأَنْ أَطْلُبُ الْعِلْمَ سَاعَةً أَحَبُّ إِلَيَّ مِنْ أَلْفِ رَكَعَةٍ. That I seek knowledge for an hour is better and more beloved than ألف ركعة, which means 1,000 rak'at. And Abu Hurairah, he also says, لأن أخرج في طلب العلم أحب إلي من 100 غزوة. That I go out for seeking knowledge is more beloved to me than 100 battles. And Abu Darda, he says, باب من العلم نتعلمه أحب إلينا من 1000 ركعة. That a chapter of knowledge that we seek is better and more beloved to us than 1,000 rak'ah.
Okay, well, upon that, we have a phone call from Sister Muna from Egypt. Assalamu alaikum, sister.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How are you, Brother Ismail?
Fine, alhamdulillah.
And Brother Gabriel, and your guests, may Allah reward you and bless you for your excellent program. You present your program in a funny way, in a comedian way, and mashallah, Brother Gabriel and Brother Ismail smile all the opposite, and this makes the program more enjoyable. And here in Egypt, we need this kind of this program. About your topic today, you speak about seeking for knowledge. Brother Gabriel said the hadith, and he didn't complete the hadith. He said, من سلك طريقا يلتمس فيه علم سهل الله له به طريقا إلى الجنة. And the Prophet said, اطلب العلم ولو في الصين. He said, طالب العلم تستغفر له حتى الحيتان في الماء إلا الملائكة لا تضع أجنحتها لطالب العلم. Brothers, if you recite the Holy Quran and understand it carefully, you will have the best knowledge. Because the Holy Quran didn't leave anything without speaking about it. Thank you. Thank
you for the phone call. Obviously, the part of seeking knowledge, even in China, is actually a fabricated hadith. But we could say there's some meaning because Islam stresses knowledge. Now, I think we've got to go for another from the land of Tim Hortons, I believe.
Yeah, Brother Wakar from Canada. Assalamu alaikum.
He went to get the French vanilla. Do we have any more phone calls? Okay. So we missed Brother Waqar. Please call back Brother Waqar. I was joking.
Yeah, I did. I'm still on the phone and I can hear you.
Oh, mashallah. So you didn't go and get a French vanilla Tim Hortons then?
No, I didn't. No, I didn't.
Yes, brother.
Right. So my quick question is that I've been trying to basically try and study, try and make time to go and study at the University of Medina, but there's work, there's family and all that stuff. What would you recommend? What would the two guests here recommend that I do? I have been praying. I have been making a lot of dua and stuff. But what would you recommend is the best way to methodically approach this to try and eventually study Islam full time?
Fantastic. Jazakallah khair.
Jazakallah khair.
No problem, inshallah. Tayyib. I think the first thing that's important to understand is that if a person wants to seek knowledge, it doesn't have to be necessarily in Medina.
Right.
You know, particularly growing up, in my generation, a lot of the du'at, they all graduated from Medina. So we had this notion that, hey, if I want to seek knowledge, it has to be from Medina. But times have changed. Other venues have opened up. There are more facilities, and you can seek knowledge from pretty much wherever you are. So my advice to Brother Waqar, that'd be point number one. That don't have your focus just purely on Medina, but make your focus on knowledge itself, and take avail of any opportunities that are available for you. So you'll find that in every major community, you'll have a couple of graduates, you have a couple of imams that are able to teach even basic things, whether it be basic tajweed, basic Arabic language, basic hadith, whatever it may be, and you should take avail of that opportunity. The second thing I'd mention is, not everyone is required to travel to study, right? So in a situation where you are married, you do have kids, that is your primary responsibility right now, and that is what you should be focusing on. So Allah has given you this amana to take care of your family, so make that a priority, and then seek knowledge at the same time. And alhamdulillah, online avenues are many as well. Like you have IOU University, KIU University, and all these other online universities that you can benefit from. So benefit from those as well. And then lastly, if you are adamant on going to Medina, I would look at the requirements first. They require that you be under 25 years old, and it shouldn't be more than 5 years since you graduated from high school, which technically, as an average Canadian, that means by like 22, 23, you're out of the loop. Right. And those extra 2 years between 23 to 25, they're gone. So look at those requirements as well, and then see what's available. Our predecessors, they teach a very valuable lesson, that the student of knowledge should not exercise travel until he's benefited from the people inside of his community first. And that's what you saw from all of the great imams of the past, that they always exercised all of the scholars that were available in their community, and then once they had learned from them all and they had nothing more to learn, that's when they would travel outside. And I think that's something that needs to be brought back, inshallah.
We have another phone call from Dubai. Go ahead, brother. Brother Arif, go ahead, brother.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
Alaikum assalam wa barakatuh.
MashaAllah, you guys are doing a very good job. MashaAllah, it's nice to see students of knowledge sitting next to you. Well, I have a question. Like, for example, see, not everyone can make it to University of Medina, and sitting in Dubai locally, like, if I'd like to gain knowledge which is equivalent to University of Medina, what could be secondary sources other than IOU and KIU, and like if I would like to attend universities in Dubai, could you recommend universities in Dubai where people could gain equivalent knowledge if they want to know about Islam and learn Islam?
Okay, I think this is something that we should answer. If we understand, you're asking about what are the resources here locally in Dubai, and you're from Dubai.
Yes.
Apart from university.
Yeah, apart from the university.
We can both answer this, but I mean, you have we have organizations like kelima.org, which we talked about the New Muslim Summit earlier. They hold regular
seminars
every few months. They have seminars, and they have regular Aqidah classes actually every Friday and Saturday morning, I believe, from 7 to 9.
Right.
They have going through should I say, Islamic fundamentals generally when it comes to Aqidah and fiqh. So organizations like that. You have the Islamic Information Center of Dar al-Bir. I mean, there are different avenues.
If you're an Arabic speaker, Sheikh Aziz Farhan.
Sheikh Aziz Farhan, yes.
Farhan is there.
And also Sheikh Fahad al-Tahiri, his masjid. Regularly.
That's right.
Yeah.
He has that in English on a Monday and Wednesday, Aqidah and fiqh, and then on Friday and Saturday, Arabic for non-Arabs, and if you speak Arabic, he has Aqeedah on Tuesday.
I think just to keep it short, if you give us shoot us a message on Facebook, we can give you the actual locations.
Go into more details.
More details, yeah.
Because I think we have another phone call. We lost the phone call.
Also, just another thing that I wanted to point out here is that the university system itself, yes, when a person goes to the university, whether it's Medina University or Al-Qura University, you benefit a lot from the university itself. But it's also important that a student of knowledge or anyone seeking knowledge should also benefit from the scholars who are not teaching in the university. Around in Medina, for example, in Al-Masjid Nabawi, there are classes that are not under the university. There are classes, regular classes, by scholars that you can sit and benefit from. Also, people have this concept that when you graduate, the degree that you get, a bachelor's degree or master's degree, makes you something. Okay. But our teachers, they highly emphasize this point. They say that when you graduate from PhD, yes, you are a researcher, but like, for example, they say every scholar is a researcher, but not every researcher is a scholar. So it's important to understand that just that university degree does not make you a scholar. Right. It could, but not in many cases, yeah.
Inshallah. I was just looking on our Facebook page. There's an interesting question that I want to ask you. Now, obviously, all of us have started, so I don't know about you, but we've started at a point where we're not as committed to the deen. Right? So the question that Sister Sajida is asking, how can you reply to someone, you seek knowledge, and they'll say, well, you yourself were not as good back in the days, how can you, now you think you're all, scholarly and so on. This is something that people, they feel sometimes that, that people become committed to the deen or seeking knowledge, that somehow, now they think they're better than people, right? So how do we address this question, the sister?
My approach to such questions is that generally people will become very defensive. They're like, oh my God, that's so true. I wasn't practicing, so maybe I should stay quiet. Okay. But you need to look at what is this person trying to do. They're trying to discredit what you're saying without actually discrediting it. They're trying to discredit the person instead. So I would respond to this with two folds. Number one, I would say, yes, so what? Even if I was like that, what does that have to do with what I'm talking about now? Right. Prove what I'm saying wrong first, and then we'll talk about secondary issues later. Right. And then number two, I would say that just mention a simple hadith. The Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالْخَوَاتِيمِ, that actions are based upon the last of them. So that may have been how I was in the past, but بِإِذْنِ ta'ala, the way I conclude my life is what Allah is going to judge me upon. So that's what's of the utmost importance.
Brother Bilal.
Also, I think the element of tawadu' comes over here. So it's important to understand two things, that being humble, you have to look at two things, that you don't look down upon others, and the second thing is, when the truth comes to you, you accept it. So these are two things that are important for ikhlas, important for tawadu', that you don't look down upon other people, and at the same time, when the truth comes to you, you accept it.
Okay, now a question that comes to mind, and sometimes it scares me, is the ayah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, يَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا لِمَا تَقُولُونَ مَا لَا تَفْعَلُونَ. And how does it become more or heavier in terms of responsibility on a scholar and a seeker of knowledge to act upon that knowledge than just a normal person? I mean, basically, the more you know, the more you're responsible for acting upon it. Is that something, that...
I'll share a beautiful story. In the old faculty of Dawah, I don't know if you visited it or not.
Yeah.
But when you're walking up the stairs, there's this beautiful statement of Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anh, which says, هَتَفَ الْعِلْمُ بِالْعَمَلِ فَإِنْ أَجَابَهُ وَإِلَّا فَارْتَحَلْ. That knowledge called out upon action, and either action responds by being in accordance to that knowledge, or that knowledge completely disappears. So I think the more knowledge a person has, the more they're required to act upon that knowledge, because knowledge is going to be a proof for you or against you at the end of the day. And that knowledge which will benefit you is the knowledge that you act upon. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He makes it very, very clear that when we talk about knowledge, it's not just theoretical information, but it is stuff that brings the khashya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. إِنَّمَا يَخْشَى اللَّهَ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ الْعُلَمَاء. That the most fearful people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are the people of knowledge. And that's what comes with acting upon that knowledge. And one of the signs of the fear of Allah is acting upon that knowledge. So without a shadow of a doubt, anyone who gains knowledge not only has more accountability towards that knowledge, and that's the scary part, but then you have the rewarding part, but you also have more access to more reward. Because now every time you teach someone something and they act upon it, without decreasing their reward, you're getting the reward for it as well. So it's like, where you might lose something, you also have so much to gain at the same time.
You know, so you had something to say?
No, it's okay.
One of the things that I think is also important to form of knowledge is the knowledge that deals with the affairs of the heart and the adab, because that's what we are very lacking, you know. And we know the Prophet ﷺ said that one of the heaviest things on the scales, if not the heaviest, or the scales would be good character. So people tend to forget that. You know, we have many people who may have the biggest beards and may seem to have the most knowledge, but they have the most foul characters. So I mean, what would you advise people on? How can they learn, or why should they learn? I mean, we know there's many hadith about character, but how can they try to improve themselves in the knowledge they need? Because obviously you mentioned they need the knowledge of the shahada, they need the knowledge of the ibadat that obligatory upon them. They need to have knowledge, of course, which we didn't touch upon as such, but of the Prophet ﷺ himself, of the halal and haram, the daily life. We could say the fifth one as such would be this affairs of the heart. So what can you advise them on? Where can they get this knowledge from? Because it's very important.
Well, definitely, without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, I think this is something that's drastically ignored, and the reason what I blame this upon is that people have distanced themselves from scholars and more familiarize themselves with the internet and with books and so on and so forth.
So they're picking up the manners of Sheikh Google.
Exactly, and Allama Wikipedia. Basically, that's what's happening.
For example, Abu YouTube.
Exactly.
Unfortunately, Mufti Yahoo has been refuted.
Exactly.
So it's no longer taken from.
Yeah, so that's what's happening in this day and age, and that element of tarbiyah, which the Sheikh is meant to provide, is no longer being provided. You know, just to mention one beautiful story. Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, he mentions that in the circles of Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, they'd have 5,000 students. And from the 5,000 students, only 500 of them were writing down, whereas the remaining 90%, 4,500, were just benefiting from the adab of the Shaykh and the way he would conduct himself. So they always focused more on adab than they did on the actual knowledge itself, because adab preceded knowledge, and that's the way it should be.
And we've got to... You have a quick point?
Yeah, I was just saying that also another way to build your character is also to read the seerah of the Prophet.
Of course.
A lot of people, they think that knowledge is like, for example, aqidah and fiqh and these things, so they ignore seerah. They ignore seerah, so it's important that they learn seerah and also read the biographies of the scholars and how they dealt with their teachers.
And before I hand over to Jibril to end today's show, you reminded me of a point, which was that the students of Imam Malik, they said that we benefited more from his characteristics and his manners than we did his knowledge. And I think it was Ibn Mubarak who said, I spent 30 years in learning adab and 20 years in learning ilm. So I mean, that says it all really.
Time flies, alhamdulillah.
When you're having fun.
When you're having fun, it's an amazing guest, mashallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you. And we hope to have you, inshallah, in a future show.
And inshallah, you guys, when you're passing through, we'll have you on, inshallah, again.
Inshallah. Canadian connection. We haven't had. I was going to ask brother Wakar, where's he from in Canada? But sound like Toronto or something.
It's still Commonwealth. We still have you.
Barakallah feek, jazakallah khair, inshallah. Again, we'll see you next Thursday at the same time on other episodes of A Time to Please Allah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh from Gabriel Al-Romaani and
Ismail Bullock.
A chance to gain reward I will spend on you, he says, all who spend in good cause. Good deeds are opportunities, sparkling bright and true, raising you in the sight of Allah and adorning Al-Jannah for you. So rush to earn his reward, don't forget the oppressed, and when you go